welcome back to the SWAU YouTube channel. I'm Brian, your host, and we've got a great guest. It is the man, the myth, the legend, the cowboy that put the swagger in Mando. It's the awesome Brendan Wayne. Brendan, welcome to the show, sir.
Wow, that was a tremendous introduction. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Well, you know what? You're absolutely worth it because you're a legend, and I've got to say, what you've done for the Star Wars universe is just incredible. So we're going to go straight off the bat, and I wanted to ask, what's life like now being Mando and being forever cemented in the Star Wars universe?
For a young kid who, whose grandfather was bigger than the world, to him and to a lot of people, to think that you were ever going to step into a space like that personally from your profession, it's just not conceivable to me. And I don't care, what anyone thinks. Like it's like that's just a whole different level. And then all of a sudden somebody goes, "Hey, I got you for this Star Wars thing. I think it'd be a great choice. I think you'd be perfect for it. And let's have you go and sink your teeth into it." Absolute craziness. Like I'd have been like, "You're absolutely off your rocker. Get out of here." But thankfully, I never looked at it in that kind of retrospective way. I just kind of looked at it one step at a time. So, and I still try to. And it's pretty easy when you know that all that stuff that people try, they want to give you all the accolades and everything. That the team did it. And so when it's much easier to walk on the ground when you're walking with your brothers and sisters. And so it's really nice.
I mean, obviously your life has changed now for you after 3 seasons and Boba Fett. But I was really shocked to hear that during season 1, you were still working. You were still working not only on the show, but bartending, pulling pints, as we say here in the UK.
Yep.
I mean, I was really shocked. I mean, I presume that you're not pulling pints anymore. Those days are gone.
I don't know if they're gone. Never say never, right? I do want to own my own place at one point. But I will say this. I don't trust Hollywood, and anybody who tells you they do have never worked in it. Like there's just, you can't, everything's too fickle, So definitely first season, I was on a daily contract. I mean, I worked every day on that set. Is that right? I didn't work one day during season 1. Every other day I went in, I signed a contract, and I worked. And that's not normal. Like usually you are guaranteed, like in this it's 8 episodes, so they'd be like, we're guaranteeing 4, but probably gonna, blah blah blah. But we really were figuring Mando out. And while some people might be like, oh, that's pretty threatening, like no, I'm very happy to have earned anything I've gotten in this. I never looked at it as an entitlement. I never looked at it was just like I knew, going into season 1, I had to make sure my kid could eat when she was in college. I had to pay for my other kids. You know what I mean? Like there was I was hand to mouth walking into the set, and it takes a month for them to pay you on the first week. So there was nothing. And I love bartending. I love being and hearing people's stories and watching them live their lives. And I had a lot of regulars. I'd been at the Lobster in Santa Monica for, at that point, it was 20 years, and I lasted another year and a half until I got sick. But that was it. Like, I would have stayed. I probably would have at least tried to keep one night a week. First of all, as a parent, I think a lot of parents would know this. You didn't have to ask for permission to go to the bar because I was going to get paid to be at the bar. So I could go hang out, be done by midnight, and, hang out with some buddies for a couple hours and then go home. And that's what I did quite a bit. So
the question is, have you got a name for your bar? Have you thought of a name of what you'd want to call it?
Yeah. So initially, I thought, I'm going to ride my grandfather's coattails as much as I can here and, do something like The Searcher or something in that vein, or maybe Big Jake because I love that movie.
Mm.
Even McClintock, just something a little offbeat, but that might tie in. And now, you know, Din's Den could be it. I have a few. I have not decided on it, and it could be the kids,
Mm.
and because to me that Grogu, the Baby Yoda. To me, I never, unless I'm very serious, I'd never call him Grogu. I call him
Mm.
the kid because
Mm.
that's our relationship.
I mean, I've got to say, if I was going to have a bar, it would be like Roadhouse, and I'm talking about
Yes,
about the original, not the remake.
come on.
Do you know what I
No,
mean? Because Patrick
Swayze,
Swayze. Do you know what I mean? It's
rip the
just
throat out.
awesome. Don't get me wrong. I've seen the new one, and it's all right. But I think the nostalgia side of me, I like the original, and
It's
I'll always will. I'll always will.
I'm I laughed at myself last night coming away from footy practice with my kids, and somebody sped by on the street, and I'll tie this in. And I looked at him and I thought to myself, oh, I'm that old man where I yell at people to slow down. I just realized it, like it just hit me. And then I think also going towards that is Red Dawn. I went
Mm,
and saw the sequel and I was really excited, uh, and it was terrible. And there was something about the context of these movies, like Goonies, like
mm,
uh, like I don't think you can take because if you didn't grow up with the Red Scare, I don't think you would understand
mm,
what Red Dawn really means, like really means.
yeah.
Now, terrorism, that's something that you could play with, but like it just wasn't the same. It didn't have that context and meaning. Same way for me, New Hope had such context and meaning, and will always carry me. I will remember it as the first movie. It wasn't, but like I remember it as the first movie that my mom took all of us to go see. But I remember sitting in Van Nuys at the GCC theaters, which is now a Best Buy, and there's 8 of us plus my mom, so 9 of us watching Star Wars, and I was that was it. You had me. You had me with it right at the get go. So it was unreal. Land speeders. So yeah, that
Yeah,
was very cool.
yeah. Again, the originals for me has always been my favorite. And a little quick story: I was married to my wife for 2 years before she mentioned that a great auntie was actually in the original Star Wars. She
Get
played,
out.
yeah, she was in the cantina scene. She played the part of Cabe, the person with the bat ears.
Yes.
Yeah. So she shared that part with Rusty Coffee. And she told me literally after 2 years of being with her that, yeah, she was in that. And I was like, what? And I couldn't
Wow.
believe it. And I've actually got a contract. I've got a contract. I've got a passport and everything like that. I'm keeping it safe because it's great memorabilia. It really, really
Oh
is.
my.
It's history.
Absolutely.
Um, but no, I mean, talking about fans and fandom, I mean, there are different levels of fans when it comes down to Star Wars. And I've got
Yeah.
the list here. So you've got the OT generation who grew up with the originals like ourselves. And then we've
Yeah.
got fans that just like enjoying taking the ride. You've got fans who live the universe day and night. And you've got the fans that literally are Jedis,
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you fall? In that? I mean, how much of a fan are you?
Well, it's funny. So I'm an OG for sure. Like original. Like that was. You're not gonna get better. Um. Um. I had no idea that I would love to cosplay as much as I do, but I get paid for it. So it's different, I guess. But it's honestly my love for it, the telling these stories that John and Dave and Rick and everybody who writes, uh, it's unreal to be a part of that and to think, when I studied acting, I went anywhere from method to Meisner to what I've settled on, which was Chekhov, and this idea that you're, 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 your ability to create imaginatively invites you, the audience, to be part of it. And it's the only way I could have done this role any justice, because to to methodize it for me would have brought, I would have been so focused inside, Mando couldn't radiate. And for me, I wanted to radiate him. But I would say I'm an OG. I just don't know how, like the canon stuff. There's guys on my set. I thought I was pretty good. And then I started this, and then guys who I work with daily who are like, hey, you can't do that because that falls under this. And we already established in canon, in, Phantom Menace, that this, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And then John, who I consider encyclopedic on his knowledge, will literally stop while we're, shooting something and be like, cut, and get on the phone, and I'll be like, what? I remember first season this happened so much. Hey, Dave, can you explain if we can do this? And then there's Dave, and like, so you talk about the levels. So there's me. Then there's my crew members, like Maria Sandoval, who does hair, like, who are like, they can quote and correct anybody except for the wizard behind the curtain, Dave Filoni. And if there's somebody who knows more than him, I don't know who it is, and it's not George. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be Dave, if anything. So in that, I would give Dave that echelon of live it every day. I'm at the other end, but my appreciation for it has grown. I don't even know how, exponentially, because of the fans. So growing up, John Wayne, as your grandfather, you see fans, and they were incredible and kind, and they still are to this day, to him, and what he represented. Uh, but everyone warns you, oh my God, these fans, those fans, Star Wars fans, it's toxic. I've been absolutely blessed, and probably because I didn't have to be the headlights that you saw coming. I was able to kind of naturally, organically grow as in everybody's mind as participant in this incredible journey. And so I don't know. I kind of look and go, I'm at first you could be really I don't know what's the word. I don't know, and feeling entitled almost because you didn't get this and that and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, I get to do things that other people in my position in Star Wars wouldn't be able to, you know, because they're so famous. I'm able to coach my kids. I coach the local high school. And, as awful as the strike and everything has been, I've made good with the time I've had by being able to give back to the community the best way I knew how, and being part of young people's lives who aren't related to me. So I coach them. And so Star Wars is my fandom for it has grown incredibly. I've become very good friends with Michael, Adam, Andy, people in Mando Mercs like Renee. Like these are my friends. My I'll throw out her Michelle, who's on Instagram. She's New York country girl. Um, they keep you honest. And any of the dirty, like, gross people who like to try to, be like, you don't like Pedro. I'm like, block, bye. Like, I'm like, get out of here. I'm not even having a conversation with you. I tried once and it worked. And then I was like, I can't do this every day.
Yeah.
And I just stopped. I'm like, I'm done. Like, check my history. Who do we text each other? He wins, an award. I'm there. When I was sad, I lost my buddy, Carl Weathers. He was one of the first people to text me. And it was, it's like that kind of camaraderie you don't get, if you don't like each other. There's no obligation. I will never speak poorly about somebody in the press. Like, I'll never do that. I'm not like that little coward. Like, I'm a big fan of who I work with and all the people, and it's incredible. I'm so
I'm
so lucky.
I mean, again, you can't keep banging that drum. Unfortunately, fans are fans, and you
Yeah,
can keep saying it until you're blue in the face, but they'll just keep
yeah.
hounding on. So the best thing to do is just ignore them, because you're
Yeah,
giving
I
them
just walk.
power. You're giving them power
Yeah.
by responding. So let's go back to the beginning. So how did the role of Mando come about for you? I mean, how did you get the role? How was it presented to you, and what was the audition process like?
Well, I mean, it was crazy. It's so Hollywood in this sense of like it's you know, like you hear those stories about like Jane Russell was found on a soda. She was at a soda jerk having a cream soda, and you're like, ah. But like I'd worked with John a decade before on Cowboys and Aliens, and I thought I had a huge part. By the time they finished editing, um, it wasn't quite as big as I thought, but it was still like it was such a great experience. I got to do a western. I worked with people and stuntmen, and I'm not a stuntman. I just love to get physical, and I'm not as good as Keanu Reeves physical. So let's not play around.
Do you know
Lakeith
what?
is the stuntman.
Do you know what? Sorry to interrupt, but I've got to say, you said something in a previous interview that you did with someone, and I thought it was so lovely. You said that you don't want to be referred to as a stuntman because it's beneath you; it's actually above you,
Oh
with
God.
what they do. And I just thought that was so nice to say, and it was so endearing. It was just wonderful to hear something like that, because the stunt community, I don't think, get enough recognition at times. So it's really
No.
nice to hear someone like yourself actually recognizing them.
Yeah, it's funny because you often hear actors talking about how much, stunting they did, and because I'm friends with these guys. First of all, I'm friends with them because they're generally the least ladder climbing,
Hmm.
so I can just be honest with them. We can, uh, they're generally the most honest, like earnest guys out there. They just want to do a great job, and they really don't want you to put the camera on them and make them a star. They like doing what they do, and they just want the credit for what they're doing. So for me, I look at these guys like Latif. I watch him do that fight in season 3. Like that alone, I'm like, you know what? Cheers, man. You are unbelievable. Like for anybody to be like, hey, yeah, and it's a producer's, discretion, like to be like, hey, yeah, we're just gonna, we'll label him a stuntman is, I think, unfair. And you thought it was gonna change with John Wick. I really did because of just like, there's a guy who actually does a ton of stunts, by the way, Keanu, who does not take credit for it. He is constantly shining the light on those who make what we watch, what we love, like those moments that are high stress and that are performed by other people. All credit should be given to them for that. And that's why I look at pictures and I tell people if they have me signing them, um, just so you know, that's Latif. That one is not me. Like I try not to sign things that aren't me, unless I know they're going to get both signatures, something like that. Because it's just otherwise I'm being gluttonous, and we don't need that. You
Which
know.
is really nice, and it just shows the relationship you have with others like Latif, that
Oh,
you honor that. But talking about John Wick, I've got to say, I was speaking to Stephen Dunleavy, who is the stunt coordinator for John Wick 4,
yeah,
and I was quite amazed that Keanu did a lot of his own stunts. And he did the
yes,
stunt with the car, when he was driving it around and he picks up the gun.
yes,
He did all that driving himself, which I think is astonishing. It's like it's
okay,
above, in my eyes, a Tom Cruise moment. But no,
absolutely.
yeah.
He now Speed.
Oh,
Like I don't know if you know this.
it's an
So the
amazing
movie
film.
Speed with Sandra Bullock, they had that pan that's coming in through the window of the bus, and you can see in the square underneath the bus, there's Keanu, and they pan in, they pan down. They're going 40 miles an hour, and he is on one of those stupid crawlers underneath that bus. They could never do it now.
Mm,
But I was talking to the DP, And he was like, that was Keanu. He was under that. Like, we couldn't get those because we were talking about like the things that we loved about those movies we watched. Schwarzenegger and those guys. Uh, that's what separates some of them. Like Keanu. Not only that he does it, but he did it with grace and humility and never had to tell anybody. Like I had to learn that later on, and
Mm.
that is an example that I'd always followed. Like if there's one person that they were like, hey, look, you can only work with one person and at your choice, like in your top tiers. At 52 years old, as long as I've been in this business, it jockeyed for many years, like year to year, I could have changed it. For the last 10 years, Keanu Reeves is the one I want to work with more than any. I want to see him in Star Wars. I want to, whatever it is, like he does he's somebody that I look up to and I try to
Mm.
follow the lead that I hear about told by people on set with him. Like
Mm.
that would be incredible.
Which, you know what, we should never say never, because obviously Carrie Ann Moss is in the new Acolyte series,
Yes.
and it's just amazing. The trailer is just stunning.
Dude, how
Um,
good is that?
Honestly, I
I,
think
I
it's on another
I'm
level.
excited for that.
And the great thing about that show, they actually brought in the writers' room someone that actually had never seen Star Wars, because they wanted
Yes.
to get a fresh sort of perspective, someone that was an incredible writer that wouldn't necessarily be following the same sort of pattern, to get
Which
sort
is
of a fresh, because obviously the series looks from the trailer something completely different. And this is what I loved
yeah.
about the Mandalorian. Again, not only did it start the Disney Plus streaming service, and in all fairness, that was the reason why I subscribed, was for the
Yeah.
Mandalorian, because everything about it just looked amazing. Not only did it look like a Western, which are my favorite movies, but
Yeah.
obviously Star Wars. I mean,
Yeah.
when you got the role, how secretive was it all? Because Disney and Lucasfilms are very well known for their secrecy and keeping stuff under wraps. I mean, how sort of locked down was you with your NDA? I mean, were they tapping
Oh, I mean,
phones, following you around?
well, so like if I wanted to look at the script through my phone, I would have had to have like they were allowed to like be in my phone, so I never did that. Like I was like, that's not happening. So I made them print my scripts so I could have them. But yes, and then like I would have castmates, like Emily Swallow, and she'd be like, "So, what's going on in this show we're doing?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Because I forget that they'll only give you what you're in. And so she's like, and so, I never told her anything. But, like, I realized, oh my gosh, like, this is crazy. And I would tell them, and it was easy out for me. I'd be like, you guys realize I sign a contract every day. So, what do you think I know compared to you? That I
Wow.
did get away with that quite a bit, but like it was tight. And if they saw you with your phone, they would walk up to you and be like, "Hey, you got to put your phone away." I'd be like, "Oh, I'm talking to my daughter." They'd be like, "Put it away so we know you're not using your camera." And you're like, "Got you. All right." So yeah, they were pretty. Even going in for the role, as you asked, how did it come about? What it was, John had asked me. He was working with Sarah Finn and Jason Stamey, who was in her office, had recommended, hey, they're looking for a guy who's Western, who's more Western than Brendan. John's worked with him. And so they gave me a call. We're like, hey, will you try on this Star Wars suit? That's what I got from my agent. And I was like, okay, do I get paid to do it? And they were like, well, yeah, but it's Star Wars. I'm like, I got it, but I'm not giving Hollywood anything for free anymore. And they're like, yeah, you'll get paid to do it. I was like, all right, cool. Like I just gotten to a certain point in my career, and I didn't know I'd gotten there until then. I knew my daughter was leaving in like 10 days to go to college, and I'm like, if I'm taking a day off work, you better pay me because I get paid at work. I do well. So, and that's kind of where I came from. Funny enough. Uh, so I went and tried it on, and when they opened it, I was like, Boba Fett. It's the funny, like I still do it to them. The legacy guys are like, no, it's not Boba Fett. I'm like, okay, dude, I signed the NDA, it's good. They're like, no, it's not Boba Fett. I'm like, okay, Boba Fett, Boba Fett. And they're like, you're an idiot. So I put this costume on, and it was initially made for somebody who had played Batman for Ben Affleck,
Yeah, Richard
and
Richard Citrone, who
yeah, who's a stud.
I've actually chatted to, and he's an incredible
Oh,
guy.
yeah,
Doubled for Batman and Zeus on Zack Snyder's
yes.
Army of the Dead. Yeah, I can't believe that he was in line for it, and you beat him. Well done, you.
Yeah, well, I didn't beat him. I think what happened was he's 6'5",
Mm,
and nobody else is 6'5" on the show. So I don't know that you could have like I think that was part of it. I think they also realized that they wanted somebody who was like a trained classical actor,
mm,
which I was from theater school. That's where I worked. When I didn't work on TV, I was constantly doing theater, whether I was producing it and doing it or being a part of somebody else's show. So for me, that was, the greatness of it all. I loved the craft of acting. And so the challenge of putting on a helmet was going to be interesting if I got that opportunity. So we took some pictures. The helmet fit perfectly. The guys were like, "You're the guy." And I was just standing like I do, where I sink into my hip. And they're like, "This is unreal. Like, you're the exact thing they want." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know about that, guys. I'll take today's pay and walk away happy." And they're like, "Dude, you have no idea." I'm like, "Okay." And I still didn't know what the show was about, what the name of it, like it was all under wraps. And then I get a call a few days later, and they're like, "Hey, look, we need you to come in next week." And I was like, "No, I can't." And my agent's like, "What?" I go, "I can't. My kid's going to college. I leave on Saturday. I can't do anything next week." They're like, "How about you just come back early?" I'm like, "That's not happening. My kid goes to college once. If it was her wedding, maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I'd be like, she could get married a couple times, but I'm not missing this." So I went,
good man.
I told them no, and then they called me again and again. They're like, "We'll fly you back." It's like, "No." And then finally they were like, "Okay, we need to see you in 2 days. You're doing a screen test in this. Here's the material, blah, blah, blah." And I remember walking into, building number 2, stage 24 or 21, and walked in, and John was so excited to share his story. When he's telling his story, he's so engaging. You can't stop watching him. And so he's, "Hey, I'm building this 20-foot high LED," and I'm like, all I can think of is, um, I can barely work my G-Shock watch, and you are talking at me like I might have any clue at what a genius you are, and I'm not there. Instead, I'm in the costume, and they're running up to show me this, rifle. I'm like, "It's too long." And they're like, "What?" And I don't know what. I just knew. I knew the space. I knew the Western, and I knew what it needed to look like in my mind. And I was just very calm. I was like, "You got to drop this holster, get this rifle so that I can flip it." And they were like, "Flip it?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I can grab that, stock and pull it over. And they're like, "Oh, wow." I'm like, "Yeah, like, why else am I carrying that?" And they're like, "Well, it's an Easter egg from," I'm like, "I don't care. Everything needs to be functional. There's
Mm.
nothing on a gunslinger that isn't functional. Like, everything has a purpose." And John knew that. Like, John got it. He understood. I'm like, "I need this lower because if you're a gunslinger and you're raising your hand to your waist, you die because they see you raising your hand. And I'm not going to walk around, up here all the time. That's going to be terrible." They were like, "Oh my God, okay." So drop that, um, shorten the rifle so it doesn't catch in my boot when I walk. Uh, like these little things, and I'm just, I keep spewing stuff. And I'm at some point, I remember thinking, just who the hell do you think you are, Brendan? Like, these people have made billions of dollars in their careers, from the prop masters to, like for the studios or whatever. And you think you have some revelatory idea. And
But it just
No,
shows
like
how collaborative they obviously are, John and Dave. But it always gives me a vision in my head of two kids that have eaten far too much candy that is on set, and then literally their brain is going at 100 miles per hour, and every time someone
yeah,
says something, they're looking at each other going, yeah, we'll do that.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Oh,
and
let's do that.
yeah.
You're right. Their excitement is so, and I didn't really like. I knew who Dave Filoni was, but I didn't know who Dave Filoni was. Like, I knew he did. He loves it when I call him cartoons. I knew he did cartoons, and so, but he's so humble. John's so approachable that you just don't. You forget to be in awe because they're so inviting. And that is a compliment if I've ever given somebody, especially, I mean, at their levels, like they've earned everybody's respect. Whether you like what they do or not, they've done beautiful work that has mattered to so many. So you have to give them it, even if you want to be begrudging. And when you do that, and when you have that, it's it's a recipe for success. It doesn't mean the public's going to love it or not. I thought it was time for a Western. So for them to be able to pull this kind of mythology off in such a way and talk about, so I do the screen test, we do really well, and I leave. I go to Boston to take my kid to school. My mind's not there like normally, like I would be on a callback or something like that. Like I'm not thinking about it. We're there for a week with my kid. Um, we're like 4 days in, and I get a call from my agent, and he's like, "Brendan, you sitting down?" I'm like, "No, I'm trying to walk up 3 flights of stairs carrying this freaking mattress that my daughter needed for her dorm." And he's like, "Okay, you're kind of ruining the moment right now." I'm like, "Do you need me to sit down? What, like, are you gonna fire me?" I already have a letter from the first agent who said they didn't think I was gonna ever work. Literally, it's in a
Wow.
typed letter. I still own it. They are no longer around. Thank you. But so he's like, is the whole family there? I'm like, yeah, of course we are. Why? Like, and I'm beyond not thinking. I'm just trying to make it up some stairs. So I get up there finally, and I go, "Hey, everybody, Nick's got Nick Diarmandi, my agent." He's like, "Hey, so they want you." And I'm like, "Who wants me?" And my wife is literally like, "You are an imbecile." And I'm like, oh, they do. All right, so what does it mean? And they're like, he's like, "Well, look, we'll figure out, how much you're gonna do." They tell me it's a daily or whatever. I'm like, "Great." And I'm literally thinking, shoot, if I can just make it like 10 days, I'm pretty sure I can cover my daughter's first, like, because she got a scholarship, I can cover her food and bills like that in her first year. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I think we could pull that off. That's what I'm thinking. Because I'm like, it's a daily contract, doesn't sound very secure. So I'm not giving up my bartending gig. And my agent's like, "You're out of your mind." I'm like, "No, I'm not." Like, whatever. Um, we start, you know, I start rehearsals with them the second I get back from Boston, and I'm, going over to the production office, hanging out with Deb Chow, and Rick Famuyiwa, who I used to play basketball against in high school, who did dope. We both, not at the same time, but SC guys at one point. Uh, Bryce Dallas Howard. I'm there with Gina Carano. I got a great story about that, you know, um, and like getting comfortable with somebody who's an absolute star, and so all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I'm doing this. Oh, this is crazy. Is it crazy?" And I'm like, no. Let's just keep working, keep my head down." My wife bought a Boba Fett helmet off Amazon. I walked around in it all the time. I tried to ride a motorcycle in the dirt in it. Not a good idea. But for the most part, everything else worked out. Like I didn't die. So it was good. And then, you get on that set and you're walking into the NICTA camp and you're going to go save baby Yoda, and
Do you
you're
know
working
what?
with real Hackford. It's crazy.
It is so lovely to hear you say that when you get offered this job, the first thing that you think of is your kids. And
Oh,
we do as parents, our kids
yeah.
are like the priority. As soon as we have kids, our priorities in life completely change, and we go from not self-preservation but literally protection for our girls and our
Protection mode.
kids. Yeah, oh god, yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like my girls know how to fight. Every one of them. They know how to scan a room when they walk in it, know where their exits are. They don't live in fear. They live in knowledge. That's what I always say. But yeah, it's funny you say about our lives change. Like between my wife and my daughter Celia, um, if I didn't have them, I'd be dead in a gutter somewhere. I mean, maybe something else would have crept up, but they came at the right time, and because you say priorities, like people are like, oh, I'm my priority, or like I don't know, like their goal setting is them. Like my goal setting wasn't ever anything as obvious as that. Mine was and I don't mean like let's hurt other people. I mean like let's have some fun. I'm gonna go boxing. I'm gonna go try that for a while. I'm gonna go whatever it is. Like I wasn't an adrenaline junkie, but I definitely didn't look out for my best interests. You know what I mean? And so to all of a sudden have that, and then to know that living means something so much more and is so much better with this new tapestry that you've, involved, this new thread has come in, and you can look across at your wife and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to be better because I need to be better around you because I need to earn you every day, or like my daughter, like, oh, I need to be better because you're going to see what I do, and you know now when I make mistakes it doesn't affect just me. uh, it's a much bigger battle, and that's like we're constantly checking those kind of things in this. So for me, it came at the right time, this kind of opportunity, because you weren't going to get a guy who was going to work harder, more diligently, or more earnestly.
I mean, we are going to continue talking about the Mandalorian. It's like family time now. But one quick
Yeah, but that's what the Mandalorian is.
it is,
To
yeah. It's about
to bring it
family.
back in,
Yeah, and
it's
and
absolutely.
the arc as well with Grogu as well. I just think it's beautiful. But quickly, with your daughters, when they bring their first proper boyfriend home, have you got any ideas of maybe how to introduce yourself? Maybe come into the room dressed as Mando. You know what I mean, and just
Oh,
scare the hell out of
it's
them.
so. I have one that we who's adopted, who's 27, and before Mando, and I knew the kid's father. We played basketball together in a parents league, um, and so I'd warned him, your kid's gonna probably pinch leather in the car, but I'm gonna scare the hell out of him. And he was like, "Oh, do it! I want to hear." And so when I went out to the car to say, Nicole was getting ready, I wore jeans and a t-shirt, but in my waistband was my 45. And so I leaned over the window and was talking to him, and he kind of scanned me, and you could see the moment where he was like, is that the handle for a gun? Like in his head. And he didn't want to say anything, but you could see. And I said, hey, listen, man, you know, I know your dad. I know where you live. Uh, I trust you unless you give me a reason not to trust you. You can have her till 11 o'clock. The caveat is this. When you get back here, whatever you two do, you have to do with me. And he goes, what? Yeah, what? Yes, sir. Yes, yes. I go, she's getting ready. Come on inside. Mom wants to meet you and everything. Da, da, da. And I acted like he was like, you could see his head. Like, I don't
That's
even know if he could have
excellent.
stood up without passing out. But like, that's the deal. But now that I'm Mando, like people know, and especially like they're like, wait, your dad's the Mandalorian? Oh my God. And then their parents are like, wait, he's the Mandalorian and he's John Wayne's grandson. And if you follow, like any of my Instagram, like on the real Brendan Wayne, like They're like, wait, he was out shooting guns with the FBI. Okay, this is, oh my God. And so you get very traditional. I like to think that my daughters had good taste, but at the same time, like you get a very traditional response that I don't see often
Do you know
anymore.
what? I'm a great
In dating.
believer in responses like that. My 6-year-old daughter, apparently she's got four boyfriends. I
Yeah.
said, no, you're not allowed a boyfriend unless your boyfriend comes up and asks daddy. One of them came up
Yes.
to me in the playground and said, excuse me, Cara's daddy, can I be Cara's boyfriend? And I said, no. And I walked off.
Yeah.
I said, no, because she's too young. She's 6 years old. She can't have four boyfriends. Oh, I
No.
tell you what, I'm dreading when they get older. I really am. Um,
Oh,
and
oh no, no. It's a process.
well, my 10-year-old,
That's why I
she's,
coach them, just so you know.
yeah.
That's why I coach them, because I just wanted them to be used to having me around in high stress moments, like those kind of things. So if I give you any advice, that's the one. Find something to coach them in.
Yeah, I am outnumbered in the house. I really am
Oh, I'm with you.
for females, and this is my
Yes.
panic. This is my panic room here. So this is where I can hide away and get away from the
My
madness.
wife says, honey, I have a feeling at some point you're going to get on our cycle. I was like, oh my God. She goes, you're just going to start to feel a little soreness. And I'm like, we're done. We're not talking about this.
Game
She's
over.
like, you got dogs and daughters, and they're all female. I'm like, I wouldn't have it any other way. Like,
Yeah,
I told my mom
exactly,
at 17,
exactly.
all I want is girls. People are like, oh, you didn't have a boy. I'm like, I didn't want one. They're
No.
like, why? I'm like, come hang out with me and my five brothers. That'll tell you right there. Like,
Mm.
there is nothing sacred among us. And I don't need to bring in anything like that into the world.
Exactly, and all men should have their little princesses to look after.
Oh, yeah.
I've got to say.
There's nothing better.
Exactly. So I've got to say one of the things I noticed in Mando is that you go from the Razor Crest to the N1, which is an awesome little ship. I nearly swore then. Ship. But, but there was one thing I noticed that when you sat in that ship, the one thing I was concerned about was your head was going to hit the canopy, and then all of a sudden it cut and you were lower down and you're in it. I mean, what was that like? Because the Razor Crest was lovely and big, and you
Oh,
had Chris Bartlett there, being Zero and stuff like
yeah.
that,
I
and
mean, I could walk down a ramp all the way
yeah,
to the ground. I didn't. I had a ladder if I needed it. I had room to turn and look. And then you get the N1, and they are so excited. It's built to spec. And I'm putting my brain to it. I'm like, what's the spec? Hey, what does that mean? Exactly. And they're like, well, I mean, the N1 from, oh my God, the race, the kid,
Phantom
when young
Menace.
Anakin.
No, no, no.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Phantom Menace.
yeah.
And he's got to go through the canyon and everything, and it's he gets in. And I go, oh yeah, that was made for that. So that's spec to the 9-year-old, and they're
A
like,
tiny person.
yeah, and I'm like, didn't he stand in it? And they were like, yes. I go, so made for like a 4 foot tall person to stand and be, and they were like, we're making a booster seat. Like you could tell they were like, oh God. They're like, we're making a booster seat. I'm like, okay, that sounds good. All right, that works. So they're like, okay, get in. I'm like, where's the ladder? Because I have the script. It says ladder. You use ladder to get in. And they're like, yeah, we just want you to make it look cool. So go ahead, like you're getting on a horse. And I'm like, what? And they're like, get on like you're getting on. I'm like, okay. So I go, where can I step on this to get in? They're like, really, there's only one spot that has actual steel. The rest of it's got some carbon, and if you step on it, you're going to break it. I'm like, where's that? And it's like indented, so I can't get my foot in and my boot. Like, I have to get up into that thing as quickly as I can, because otherwise I'm going to break something. And then I get into it and I sell it and it's all right. And I try to go down and it doesn't fit because I'm too wide because they made it for a 9-year-old. And so, like, you see me and I scrunch in and then I get in and then getting out, I literally, Bryce goes, "What are those?" And I had bruises right here. And I mean, like, dark black. I still have a picture of it. Um, and they are deep because I had to stick my arms as hard as I could on the canopy opening so I could push myself up out of this thing. So going from the Razor Crest to N1, while I love the N1, it's about as practical as having a two-seater would be, which is not practical at all. But man, when you get to go, honestly, it was amazing to go fly it, even though it wasn't really flying. Within the volume, the Razor Crest was pretty awesome, and it felt like a soccer wagon. Versus you get in that N1, and for me, like if I could have one car when I don't have to drive people around except for me and my wife, AC Cobra. That's what I want, and that's what this was for me. My brother likes to call it, the shovel, the Chevelle, because he thought it kind of looked like that with the ram air in it and the whole thing. So I personally miss the Razor Crest every day. And if one day I will show you. Actually, if I meet you in London, I will show you a picture of what do you call it when they draw it?
The blueprints.
But there's like a word like oh my God, not key art. But anyways, like when this is what we're going to shoot today. This is what it's
Oh,
going to look like.
storyboard.
Storyboard. Thank
Yeah.
you. The storyboard for that, like when Grogu climbs up under my bandolier, the picture, because we had to have the legacy guy who controlled Grogu right there so that Grogu could crawl up, and we removed the front of the N1 so that he could be there really intimately with me. And it's one of the greatest storyboards I've ever seen in my whole entire life.
I wanted to talk about the mannerisms because you were credited, if I'm right in saying, as being a stunt double, which
Yeah,
which I think is quite ridiculous because you're an actor. And even though you've got the helmet on, your movements, is acting. And what you
yeah.
do on screen is marvelous. I mean, obviously, your granddad
Thank you.
walked the way he did was because of an injury, which I thought was a great fact that I read a football in injury when he was younger. But you've got such a swagger to you. I mean, how did you come up with the mannerisms of Mando? Because it does make it a lot, because a lot, you see him walking down and with the scenes with Timothy and just beautiful scenes. I mean, how did you work on that? I mean, was that something that you worked with John and Dave,
Yeah.
or was it something that you just come up with, on the spot?
So John had given me some characters to watch because initially we really wanted to make him robotic in the sense that um, he was almost soulless in spite of his creed and everything.
Mm.
Uh, and we kind of, reference it in, The Prisoner and my former life. Even though I had standards, there are still certain things that, make me one of the most ruthless bounty hunters out there, right? And so John had given me Yul Brynner and Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator and Westworld. And there's a very, like, the way Yul Brynner moves is very robotic and it's two halves almost. And so when we began season one, that's where Mando is. And then by the end of season one, he's a little bit more human in his fluidity. And so initially it was because I'm in a helmet, you're going to go towards economy of movement no matter what, because otherwise it looks like a bobblehead. But his arms and his body, that was true to gunslingers. Like, you didn't waste movement. And so it was just a challenge that I decided because I had studied kabuki and I wanted to do. Um, I knew that was the only way to radiate menace when he needed to, or even the moments with Omera and I in Sargon. Like you can't pull that off unless you understand how to radiate
Hmm.
the emotion of the moment without being like, I am physically interested in you. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like we it would have done a disservice. And I think John's John and Dave, kind of give a blueprint to the everybody, including themselves, to work with. And so everybody just kind of took that and went with it, and it was great. And then they just kind of were like, all right, you got it. Now just stay where you're living and go for it. And I didn't get a lot of, corrections and things like that. And it was really nice to know that, I contributed. And by no means was it, I'm going to walk and this is it, take that, boys. It's with them, it's so easy to collaborate. It's so inviting that you never feel like, oh, my artistic idea is getting thrown away. You're just part of, the
Hmm.
molding. Like we're all putting our hand on the spinning pot and figuring out what we're doing. Um, Latif and I would sit there if we couldn't be together, we would FaceTime each other and talk about, hey, what are we doing? Oh, well, don't touch that gun because if you do it, you got to pull. Don't even get close to the leather because that's a giveaway. Every time our hand hits that, it's going and we're killing or we're putting a stop to whatever's going on. And that's how it's going to work. And we came up with these rules and we lived by those rules, much like the creed. And that's this last season, it was funny because Carl came up to me and he was like, "Listen, he's evolved. This kid has allowed him to develop. So let's show it physically." He goes, "We're still gonna minimize compared to most people, but Din Mando has to have a little bit more life in him." And that's what we did. As much as you saw me in season 3, that's what we were working towards. And I think in the scene with Grief Karga and I trying to put IG back, um, you see a lot more humanity in his movements.
Mm.
He's not just a killer, and that's how we. I know you asked me how but it wasn't I. It's always been we. Um, I have to live it and embody it, and that's my job, and I take it absolutely to heart. Um, but that's I'm very lucky, in that way. But Simon Jays, who does camera, like he is as good as they come. Baz, and then Greg Fraser before that. Dave Klein now, like it, the subtlety, and they understand what we're looking for, and they're able to check me. Like every day, I'm able to look at Simon or Murph, any of the camera, and they're comfortable enough to give me their expertise. Like to me, it's like if you're going to work with great people, you don't necessarily have to try to be great. What you have to do is try to imbibe as much of their expertise as you can and then see what you put out there. And
Mm.
that's what I try to do every day. From Josh and setting our prop master, you know, to Jeff and greens, to Jeff and lighting, to practical effects with Roy back in the day, and we just all these people who are great at what they do, love the genre, love Star Wars, down to my grips, Diego and Easy, and like there's nothing that goes unnoticed. And if you have enough, for me, it's confidence. I guess some would say, um, I don't think it's anything else. Like I have enough confidence to know that I don't know everything, and it's okay. And as long as we don't expect me to know everything, then we can go produce something that is viable. And that's, you know, that's the only way to approach this, because Star Wars isn't, Mando isn't mine. Um, it isn't just because I perform the movements. It doesn't make it mine. It's just, it's what I give in this Star Wars, which is so important to so many, including myself, to be a part of this mythology and honoring the mythology that we're representing. You know, whether we're talking about Greek mythology or we're talking about Western mythology, it's all part of the fabric of what we love in storytelling. And it's how we identify moments to become better people. And I know that obviously sounds really high and grandiose, but I'm telling you right now, my experience having met fans and their experience and how they have been inspired tells me that's what we're doing. We are affecting people and encouraging them to be at their best in the toughest moments. But not always be, you don't have to always be in the white hat. You know, we've definitely worn, different hats in this, and that's what makes him relatable, is that he's not perfect. He gets his butt kicked often, you would say. You know what I mean?
Well, it's
Like,
done so well. It's done so well. He gets back up, and I think
yeah,
that's sort of the human side where he just keeps on going. Do you know what I mean? Which I think is
yeah,
very endearing. So, but I mean, I
crazy.
wanted to talk about Carl Weathers, Mr. Apollo Creed. To me, he'll always be Apollo Creed. I grew
Me
up
too.
watching the Rocky movies, and I've met him a few times, and I just think he's such a gentleman to meet. And he was
Yep.
awesome on this show, not only on screen but behind the screen, because he directed a couple of episodes as well. I mean, what was that like to work with him? Because it was a shock to everyone when he passed. You know, it wasn't something you would expect, because we've always seen him in these roles of very strong and big characters. So when he did pass, I think it was a massive shock to many.
Oh, I mean, there was no indications at all. I mean, we were supposed to have uh, birthday lunch because he shares a birthday with my daughter Simone, and he was always every year would call and say happy birthday. Like, that's, he was the first one to call me when I was in the hospital.
Mm.
And you don't, you asked me, what's it like to, you came up with these moves or whatever. I'll tell you right now, you wouldn't have Mando without Carl. And Carl, we were filming the scene with the bounty puck in season one, and he's Apollo to me. And I don't get starstruck. I don't. I've been at the Resolute desk with Uncle Ronnie and eating his jelly beans. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
my grandfather's on a different plateau than most, in his legend. Um, and I've met heads of state, things like that. Like, you have to do something to really kind of get to that level. And my mom was really good about making sure I always knew that everybody puts their pants on the same way. For me, at a time in my life when I needed some guidance, Carl Weathers came along when I was growing up, and he had a profound effect on me as Apollo. Um, and he, we got to that set, and we were doing that first scene, and I mean, I was probably whispering. I'm sitting across from him. I'm in the helmet. I don't mess around. I like to let them get used to seeing that, because I think it's really important to understand how to talk to Mando. Because if it's constantly me and you see my face, it's a little easier to feel different things than when I'm in the helmet. And I think it's really important. So, initially he's like, just speak up. And I was like, oh, okay, sir. And I'm, trying to do it. And we're like an hour in, and he's like, okay, Brendan, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to really, and I go, you know what? I'm going to stop you right there. I'm sorry. Nobody, like, you're Apollo Creed. Like, I'm sorry, I don't get, starstruck. And then I just let it out. And I blah, blah, blah. And he just started laughing. He was like, oh, I go, you're the first time I ever cried in front of my buddies, like I was like, and like they, we're like, no, my eyes sweaty, like, just, it was hilarious. And he's like, I've heard, and like, he's so gracious. And from that point on, I knew I had a friend and a mentor. And that's what he did. Like I couldn't get up the ramp without it looking weird when he, ambushes me. And after I ditch all the heavy Mando comes and all the Mandos come out of the covert and save me and Grogu. Well, he's unbelievable that way, and he's tired of coming out and them saying, "Well, you're not hitting this ramp right," and I'm like, "What the?" And he goes, "How would your grandfather do it?" And I'm like, I'm not him. And he's like, "How would he do it?" And so I go, "Fine." And I show him, I go, he'd lead with his shoulder, and he'd come up, and everybody, it's all quiet all of a sudden. And Carl's just looking at me. And John's like, Dave's like, "That's it. That's what I want." Deb's like, "Yeah, that's it." Like, because they were all looking. They're like, "That's it. That's how you get up." And then Carl looked at me and said, "Let it go. You're going to do it your way no matter what. Doesn't matter. Just go. Do what you know. That's what they hired you for." And from that point on, that was it. Like Carl, I would talk to Carl for hours in between light setups, and he wouldn't go run back to his room or whatever. And he loved everybody. He wanted you to work. He wanted you to be professional, but he loved you. And if you came there to make a story, he was so honored to be around you, and that was it. Like he was incredible, and he was a huge star. Like he didn't lose his like. You just knew you were talking to a movie star, and that's what he was. And he was incredible, incredible. And it was funny because my kids didn't experience him the way I did, but during COVID, we had really gotten in. We had started watching so much TV, and we got into the Chicago series, Chicago One, like PD on, and Carl had been directing there and been a lead in the show Injustice, and they were like, "That's this guy Apollo Creed." I'm like, and they all became so close. It was really cool, and I'd gone to see Emily Swallow do a play, and I didn't, unbeknownst to me, Carl was going to see her, and he always looked out for me. I was like, I was like his little brother, the way he never lowered expectations for me. He always demanded the best, but at the same time, he always supported every way he could so I could succeed. And so you don't always see that on sets, and you don't always see that with people, who pass the age of 60. You know what I mean? And I know that's probably a hot time, but like, they want, they had something and they're, always looking for it. Like Carl was who he was, and he knew he was absolutely great, but not arrogant. And that was beautiful.
But that's so refreshing to hear, because you hear so many stories of certain actors where their ego enters the set before they do. But with Carl, he'll always be remembered. He was such a great performer, and he'll always be my Apollo Creed. I mean, I'm looking at the time, and I've got a few more subjects to talk about, and I'm thinking, so every kid's dream is obviously to be in Star Wars.
Yep.
Not only are you a Mandalorian, but how cool was it to become Lieutenant Lander and fly an X-Wing? That is like literally a bucket list tick right there. I mean, how cool was that to get behind the controls and be
How
an
crazy is
X-Wing
this?
pilot?
Like, X-Wing pilot. When that was made by a fan, by the way, thank you. But when I went to, going to Italy, and David said, "Hey, when are you going to come back?" And I'm like, "Filoni, I'm going to Italy. I'm taking my family. It's the first vacation we've had in 3 years since we, started season one." And he's like, "Oh, okay, but maybe would you want to be an X-wing pilot?" And I was like, "Ha ha, you're funny," because in season one, I got in X-Wing costume and actually performed a scene as an X-Wing pilot. They were going to name him my call sign after not my grandpa, my father, who was a Navy pilot. Lava, that's what they were going to name. Anyways, I go film it. They cut. It ends up being Rick, Deb, Dave, and John. Right. So I'm like, ha ha ha, Dave, because we give each other a hard time. He's like, no, seriously. I go, all right, I'll do it, but you can't kill me. Like I want to live. Like, and he's like, we'll see. Um, and then like I'm in Italy, and they're like, hey, when you come back, we need to shoot. And I'm like, what? You guys? So I ended up coming back like 4 days early. I feel like it was kind of payback for I'm not cutting my kids' trip short. Um, but so I left a little early, and I didn't buy the place that I was going to buy, which turned out to be a good thing, because I wanted to move back to Sicily with my kids, because that's where my two of my grandparents are from there. Anyway, so uh, I get back, and there was something really cool about this role. You've never seen this squadron before. You've never seen the helmet design before. It's all singular. I am the first one to wear it. You've never seen anyone in it. Um, and there's a place in Star Wars lore for it, because it was created by somebody's son who does stuff on Star Wars, and David's seen it and said, blah blah blah, and then they, name them, and it was just really cool, like, to know that it wasn't just enough that I was an X-wing pilot, but that there was a story and a meaning behind the X-wing pilot that was different than just being lucky enough to, work with, Poe and whatever, and Luke, like, be an X-wing in that club. Pretty cool. But then when you get hey, this is part of Star Wars family, you're like, I'm in. Let's go. And, to be, to be part of saving Ahsoka and all those kind of things, like,
You know what?
yeah,
That
I'm
must
definitely
have
very
been
lucky.
crazy, because I can remember being a kid and actually playing with an X-wing and running around the
Right?
house. And then many moons later, and not long ago, I actually had in my hands one of the original X-wings from the original Star Wars. That
Oh
ILM
my.
used,
Yeah.
and it went for auction at an auction house for nearly $1 million. And I had it in my hands. I'm like the clumsiest guy in the world. Literally, if they knew, I would have had like a twitch
Uh,
or something, a spasm, and that would have been
I don't,
my
right?
life
Like,
over.
grab his tongue. You're like, grab the X-wing. But
So so
I literally think immediately Pierce Brosnan, Thomas Crown Affair, and how could you have switched that? That would have been really nice.
yeah, with a toy one. I mean, are we going to see you in season 2 of Ahsoka? Because
Uh,
I get to thinking that Dave and John, they have got their plan years ahead. They are like
it's amazing.
magicians of fitting everything into place, and everything's got an end game. So
Yeah,
I've got a feeling that this isn't the last time we see Landa. I think this isn't the last time we see these helmet designs and this squadron. So maybe
yeah.
Rogue Squadron or season 2. I mean, how fast would you say yes if they asked you
I'm
to
gonna
get your
show
face
up
on camera?
regardless and just try to demand it. Just I'm gonna be like the guy in Office Space, and I'm just gonna stay there and be like in the X-wing costume, and just be like, hey guys. They'd be like, "Hey, can we put Brendan in the cellar, please?" And, it's like, "No, yeah, that's fine. I'm down here." And I'd be like,
You're
"Can
in
I
the
get my
toilet.
helmet back?"
You're in the
Yes,
rest room. Then you're in the cafeteria, and then
yes.
you're right.
They're like,
That's the way
they're
to do
like,
it.
and action. I mean, I don't like. I want to do that absolutely. They do. The feature that Dave eventually does. Um, you got to have some X-wing, you know, squadrons going, right? Don't we? In every Star Wars movie, you got to be. It's the New Republic. We got to establish them. Top Gun, maybe I could be Mav or Iceman.
Do you know what? It's when the wings open. For me,
Oh,
that's like my childhood just coming back at warp speed. You know what I mean? It's like, oh
yeah.
my days! It's just amazing.
So my brother got the X-wing. He got the Falcon. Um, I got GI Joe, and I got the Tomcat, and I had that and those wings,
Yeah,
and because my father was a pilot, so like it was very cool to hear him. But I wanted that X-wing, and my brother wouldn't let me have it. There was no like he would just beat me. Like I'm tiny compared to my brothers. Like, smallest brother I have is 6'2", 250 pounds. You know what I mean? And then I'm 6 foot, 180, and if I'm lucky, I get to 185 if I really work out. But like they're monsters, and so I wasn't ever getting to steal that. That's why Boba Fett was my guy because somebody had Han Solo, somebody had Luke. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to play with Princess Leia. I didn't identify with her. You know what I mean? Like, it just didn't work. So I had to be, Boba Fett. And the cool thing was, I could make up whatever I wanted because you didn't know enough. And so he was, this incredible, badass. And I was, I think there was a lot of fortuitous things growing up that kind of led me to putting on the helmet and being, a Mandalorian.
it's like a full circle. It really is, which is
Oh yeah,
incredible. And then obviously with the Mandalorian movie, you have confirmed that you are working on it. So in interviews, and obviously I know that NDA is going to be tighter than tight.
a
But
duck.
yeah, but in a nutshell, I mean, what have we got to look forward to? Because the thing is, The Mandalorian to me is a movie worthy show anyway. Do you know what I mean? The way it's shot and the way it's
It's funny you
delivered.
say that because I never would have. It's not that I didn't think we shot it like a movie. I knew we did,
Mm,
but I just never. I don't know. Like I saw it on the small screen, so that's where I saw it. I thought we made the small screen look big in how Cameron and John and everybody who makes what we see incredible. What they did was make my TV seem bigger to me, like
mm.
the expanse of it all. Um, so it wasn't until recently that I really started to think about, holy cow, that walk-in moment, in Boba Fett, or that walk down the planks at the ice planet is, you know, he walks away and we pan up, with him going in. Like we're gonna get one of those on the big screen,
In
and
IMAX.
it gives me
IMAX.
chills to even think of it.
Mm.
Right? Like there it is. Like
Do you reckon it's going to be
we
like when Star Wars came out? Because the thing is, it's been a while since we've had one of those Star Wars moments, in theaters, and since the pandemic, the theaters have sort of had a massive decline. So
yeah
not a lot of people are going back, but I think this is definitely going to be what's going to bring people back. And
I
I'll be first in line because I can't think of anything better than seeing Mando on the big screen, IMAX.
yeah.
Oh,
I don't know how it works for y'all with like New Hope, Empire Strikes Back. New Hope, I could walk in. Empire Strikes Back, um, we sat outside for 12 hours because you couldn't pre-buy your tickets. And you
mm,
couldn't pre-buy a seat, let alone a ticket. Um, so we sat outside for 12 hours. I remember, like we were famous for that. Like me and my brothers, uh, really me and my older brother Dave, who was 3 years older. ET, we sat out in front for 24 hours, and we were buying tickets for Pam Dauber and Mark Harmon as well, who just happened to be in the sphere of our world. And it's funny because Mark Harmon, later on, I'd be like, dude, the guy from summer school. But for me, it was Pam Dauber because of Mork and Mindy.
mm.
And then uh, Empire Strikes Back, that was 10, and then uh, uh, Return of the Jedi. Like that was a full day and a half, and we were, luckily not in a where I lived in the valley at the time wasn't very populated, but like now you couldn't do it. But like, I mean, there were places like the Cinerama Dome where people were out there for a week waiting to get to see the first showing. So it was different. So this would, if I wasn't involved in it, would be one of those in anticipation and thinking about like how long it takes for these. Like back when we watched these movies, it was 5 and 2 and whatever. Like it felt like 27 decades happened in between each. And then I would watch a movie 10 times, in the theater. It's not like now where you can just, hit play again, play again. Like you had to, if you didn't have the money, you had to find a way to walk in when somebody left and whatever it was. Like we just did what we did. Like it was that important though. So yeah, on the big screen, like that's unreal.
Do you know what? One of my first jobs was working at Showcase Cinemas, because I thought we're better than to actually work at a cinema, so I get all my movies for free, so I could just walk in whenever I want. So I can't wait for this movie to come out. Do you reckon it's going to be a trilogy? Do you reckon there's going to be more than one that you can say or not say?
I think I can just quote Dave and say, he's directing one of them. And he talks about, the smaller story that he can tell, which is, like it's a little more centralized, like Mando was initially. Like Ahsoka, to a certain degree, is about Ahsoka and that journey. And then eventually, like Mando and Grogu, we're going to start to tell a much bigger story because now we're on the big screen and, it's still going to be Mando, right? But I think eventually, how do you not put A Battle with Thrawn and everything on the big screen? That has to be told that way, because then you're involving galaxies, not just this moment of time. I don't know. I mean, I know that Dave is directing a movie for sure because he said it. I don't know what that movie is. I don't know what it's about. He did talk about it as a bigger story. So to me, yeah, there's no doubt. I don't know if it's a trilogy.
Thing is, it's very
John's
clever what they're doing with all these shows like Ahsoka and Mandalorian. As I said earlier, you feel like it's building up to something, and I think that something is going to be what's in the cinema, because streaming is great, but the money wise,
it's fun. Money. That's the trumper right there. Is what like. We clearly built the foundation that Disney Plus was given, and now I think John's gonna do something for them that I don't know that anybody believes could be done still today, and that's create a theater line like we haven't seen in decades. I really think that that's what he's gonna do, and I say that in a humble way. I don't mean that in like I'm gonna go. No, I just mean like what he's gonna present. We're all gonna fall in love with because he knows how to do it. And I think the biggest reason is because he's a huge, huge fan, and it matters to him. It's not.
And you can tell, can tell by the love and the attention to everything in this show, because when you look back at The New Hope, you would have thought back then that this universe was going to get so big. These characters were going to. It's just incredible, right. I can't pronounce half these names. Do you know what I mean? In this universe, never mind remember them, which is incredible. Before we bid farewell, you're coming over to the UK at the end of May.
I am.
MCM.
I'm coming. Yep.
With
Very
Emily
excited.
Swallow.
First time I've been. Yeah, Emily's coming. It's the first time I've been allowed or been invited. For a while, I wasn't allowed to go out because of NDAs and all that. So now I finally, where most people have been like reaching out is in England. And so to finally get an invite out there and to be able to go and meet the fans there is going to be incredible. Like unbelievable. A gentleman, I got to actually text him, but yeah, he had offered me, seats at in Sir Alex Ferguson's box to
Wow.
watch my Gunners play, the other guys. And
Well, it's safe. It's
I
safe.
can't
I'm
get out
not
there.
into football. I've only been to see one Premier game, and that was
Oh wow.
Arsenal against Tottenham.
Yes. Oh,
So,
what a game to see.
and it was when Campbell went from Tottenham to Arsenal or Arsenal to Tottenham. And I've got to say,
Yes.
I've never been so scared at a game before. There was a woman sat in front of me that looked like a princess, but then she opened her mouth and she sounded like a,
Yes.
oh my God. I was like, there's
So
kids
before you
here.
go, I when I was doing Agents of Shield, Jamie Harris played Gordon, and he's Richard Harris' son, the whole deal. And we're talking about, and he's a Chelsea guy, and he was telling me stories. He's like, because my favorite band is the Clash. He saw the Clash, loved the Clash, and he was telling me stories about the worst beatings he took were going to a Clash concert and going to coming back from a Chelsea game, and just like just the like didn't matter. Like grandma would beat you in the street if you were wearing the wrong scarf or whatever. Like I was like, this is amazing, and it made me fall in love with it more. But yes, I'll be out in London. I cannot wait. I have
Is this,
absolute. I'm
is this
so
your
excited.
first convention in the UK then?
First convention in the UK. Yep.
Wow. How
Yeah.
amazing is
So
that?
yeah, it's going
Well,
to be unreal.
do you know what? If you're up for a good night, I've got a friend that runs quite a few bars in London. Um, so free drinks, whatever.
Let's go.
It'll be a good night. But again, you're with Emily as well, which is great because it's nice because in the US, I see you do a lot of conventions with Latif and Misty
Oh yeah.
and Chris, and it just seems like a family sort of gathering, and it's just
Oh yeah.
really nice to see.
When I so a shout out to Star Wars Autograph Universe because it's really important that people understand I'm not doing what I'm doing without them. They were the first people to ever reach out to me to, hey, would you want to do a signing? We're just a couple, fans and blah blah blah. I said, well, like how much is it going to be? Blah blah blah. And not how much am I going to make, but like I just knew I didn't want to try to be like a dilettante and be like, here's $5,000 a signature. So,
You never know.
and then
There's
I
always a
talked to
time.
these. Yeah, exactly. Well, then I talked to them, and you meet Andy and you meet Adam, and you're blown away by their just kindness. And so, people were like, well, you're going to sign on with I don't know what they call them, appearance people, and here's 27 of them. And I was like, no, I like these guys. And they were like, hey, would you, like, if would you be exclusive with us? And I was like, oh, are we going steady? Let's go. And, the next thing you know, they're, they're, they're looking out for you. And that's what they do for me. And so, um, anything they're involved with, I do for free. I would. They
Mm.
know it. And I love them like family, and they have become as important to me as you know anything. Like they're great. My kids love them. I'll be with Andy at Formula Drift. If you want to come see me, get out to Formula Drift in Long Beach. It's unreal. If you want to see me in England, come see me. I'm going to Prague in April,
Oh,
which
Prague,
is
love
I'm
Prague.
going to go. The mayor is going to take me on a sightseeing tour, and we're going to have dinner.
How amazing is that?
Like this is, I mean, it's ridiculous. This is a guy who was slinging drinks the first two seasons of Mando. Like was doing this. Hey, look, I'm like Tom Cruise in Cocktail. Hey, here you go. Like, I'm sorry your food didn't come out at the temperature you'd like. How can I help you? And literally streaming or on the TV behind us. there would be an ad for The Mandalorian, and the other people who worked there or who knew me, who were regulars, would scream, "Ah!" And then people who were like, just trying to have a nice meal were like, "This place is terrible." So
how ch-
yes, Andy and
how
Star Wars
times have
Autograph
changed.
Universe.
How times have
I mean,
changed. As long as
unbelievable.
you stay the way that you are, Brendan, and you don't turn into a
Oh,
diva, you know,
never.
never. That is great. Brendan, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Everyone watching, please hit subscribe. We've got some other great interviews coming up. And don't forget, Brendan and Emily is going to be at MCM. If you can't make it, you can go onto the SWAU website and get some pre-orders and get your autographs signed if you can't make it. But Brendan, look after yourself. Keep safe.
Thank you. Cheers. Thanks for having me.